Before we begin, I'd like to say some ground rules. Firstly, because the copyright police are threatening to slit my throat if I show even the slightest bit of Hasbro's footage, all these reviews will be in typical slideshow picture fashion. I'm sorry if that's not your cup of tea, but it's all I can do. Secondly, I have just, as we speak, posted a transcript on DeviantArt, so you can possibly read along with what Fandom and I are saying. I wouldn't be surprised if you're actually reading along with me right now. And third of all, like other Bronalists, there will be spoilers in this review. So if you're like everypony or Deborah, I advise you to abandon this Titanic right now. For those who've already seen the episode, or just don't care if the surprise is spoiled, like CC, well then, you're in for a treat. So, without further ado...
Just start the intro already!
So before we start this analysis/review, allow me to explain how this formula will work. First, we'll talk about the story and how it plays out. Then we'll talk about the writing, with mentioning how the writer handled this episode. Then we'll talk about the music, in which case we can talk about songs, if there are any. Then we'll talk about the humor. You know how that works? And the striking point is the animation. So with that, here is Princess Twilight Sparkle.
And we will be using some points that were given from two reviewers in particular, for Handsome Charmer and I. So anyway, the episode starts off with the most appalling thing I've seen in my life. Anacorn Twilight, get her off!
Really? You still can't stand her? I would think you would get used to her after a cluster of girls.
Don't remind me of that movie. During that pointless scene, we see that Twilight is staying in Canterlot for tomorrow's Summer Sun celebration. Good riddance.
Except the title suggests, this episode focuses on her fandom.
Darn it!
So after the scene that tells people like Fandom to calm down, as Twilight is still herself, we see foreshadowment of a black vine, and then the next day we hear that the Elephant sisters are gone. Well, I'd say the story is starting to pull me in.
I'd be pulled in if they took Twilight's wings away.
Let it go! Meanwhile, back in Ponyville,
the Everfree Forest appears to be, well, invading.
And honestly, I am impressed that someone in the writing staff actually listened to Josh and made a forest, i.e. the forest, that I use. Why is it that some people like Roxas617 are complaining?
We also see that these plants are smart as they outwit Big Mac. Their rival thought about clouds that don't look like any clouds we've seen. And the plants have the power to put magic on the fridge. Since when did anything like this happen? At this point, I would take Discord's breaking his promise and him being the main villain instead. He was much more likable that way.
Skipping that double point, we then meet Zakora with a potion that works with Alicorn magic. And like Mr. Enter and other bronies, I'm finding that too convenient for the plot. So she uses her Alicorn magic and wait a minute! Let me get this straight. Alicorn magic is dark magic? Headcanon time! So, based on this analogy, we can assume that the Season 3 villain, Sombra, was or is an Alicorn. And he uses his magic to create the Tree of Harmony, we'll get to that later, that contains the elements. Unless he was an evil ruler from the beginning, and he made the Tree to harness the elements of deceit, fear, sorrow, rage, spite, and doubt. Yeah, these 6 stallions. In which case, after Celestia banished Sombra, Celestia also gained ownership to the tree and changed those elements into the elements that we know now.
That's a really good headcanon. Especially when you mention those 6 fake stallions that are supposed to be the love interests of the main 6. Anyway, his potion teleports her to the castle of the Royal Sisters. And, in the words of Kimmy Sparkle, it's revealed that Luna was behind the whole thing. Because, like me, she can't stand the presence of this new princess. Then she gets so angry that she once again transforms into Nightmare Moon and brutally murders Twilight. That's it. Show's cancelled. Good night, everybody. Hey, you get back here! Don't you dare teleport out of me!
Well, since he's gone, I might as well finish this review myself. So for those who actually believe Fandoom's side of the story, he's wrong. The plot convenience potion didn't transport her there, it just showed her a vision of the past, which was done for nothing except fan pandering. Heck, Mr. Enter even points out how pointless it was. If I rewrote the script, I couldn't possibly include this scene. I would probably include something else to fill in the time slip. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you a deleted scene. Apparently the clouds were supposed to constantly change weather and annoy Pinky. I don't know if this was taken out for time constraints or whatever, but take note that just because I prefer this scene, it doesn't mean I didn't like this scene. I did enjoy it, I just didn't see any point putting it in. The other flashback is another story. So we go into the forest because the Tree of Harmony is in danger. They get attacked by a crocodile, and one of the most pointless scenes occurs. Twilight gets sent away. And that's pointless because Discord persuades her to go back anyway. We do get an epic fight to save Twilight from the vines though. So fast forwarding, because I don't want to drag this review out too long, Twilight is able to defeat the vines by returning the elements to the tree, and the tree releases a crystal box that will be important later on. And Discord's revealed to be the cause of all this. But at this point, are you really surprised? So that's all I'll give you. I could talk about Sonic Star Boom, But one, that'll drag the review out too long, and two, other analysts have described it better than me, like AY. So let's see how this writer managed to finish this three-part arc. Magical Mystery Cure was pretty much the controversial musical that some people seem to be disappointed with. But I'll describe that later. Coming from the writer of Equestria Girls, I think Megan did a great job concluding MA's story by giving it the most epic storyline ever, giving up the elements of harmony, and in the process introducing a new story arc for us. And trust me, I'll talk about it later. Now let's talk about the music. For an epic adventure, the music certainly fits. In fact, out of all the music pieces, I like the music that played during the fight between Nightmare Moon and Celestia. So, yeah, there is something I like about the Nightmare Moon flashback. Now for the humor. There is a little of it. In fact, Discord and Pinky are basically the glue that held the episode together. Not saying that I didn't laugh, because there are some scenes that warranted a chuckle from me. Like the scene where Pinky is daydreaming about frosting. Finally, there's the animation. Again, going back to this scene, this is basically the scene that shows that the company has improved on their animation, especially with the CGI on the past elements, making people, such as myself, the more excited and the more ecstatic to see how this whole season will advance. There was a clever way to score the episodes, but since FanDoom isn't here anymore, I'll just go ahead and give this episode a 10 out of 10. This three-part episode, counting Magical Mystery Cure, truly deserved it. This is Handsome Charmer, and next time I review an episode of FanDoom, I'll be putting a ball and chain on him.